All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Monday, July 5th, 2021, and this is your evening update video on Tropical Storm Elsa. So, wanted to get out a quick video this evening, catch up on the latest. We are kind of in that critical period of forecast time before Elsa makes landfall. That landfall expected in about 36 hours, sometime early on Wednesday, as Elsa does move up and into parts of Florida, with impact starting already tonight in South Florida as the first rain bands of Elsa are approaching their region. And we are expecting conditions to deteriorate pretty quickly across Central and South Florida throughout the day tomorrow. And in the Northeast Florida by tomorrow evening, as the first bands will arrive, with the storm again actually crossing Tuesday into Wednesday and then moving up through the rest of the East Coast, which will likely get to you guys tomorrow morning as far as what you guys can expect further north. But let's go and look at the latest in the National Hurricane Center as of the 8 p.m. advisory. Maximum sustained winds now just 50 miles an hour, coming down a little bit more from earlier. This is expected with the center of the storm over land, over comes some higher terrain in Cuba. Movement is northwest at 13 miles an hour. You can see all your watches and warnings here on the screen. Tropical storm warning still in effect for the Keys, from Cedar Key down to the Tri Tortugas, and then pretty much the entire west coast of Florida, from the end of the peninsula all the way up to the Big Bend. And we do have a small tropical storm watch area for areas a little bit further west of the Big Bend, just in case she jogs over that way to the last minute. But overall, forecast has not really changed from the National Hurricane Center. They have been pretty spot on with this forecast. The last adjustment really has been a little more northward, as in they've been kind of nudging the forecast up more towards the Big Bend and less towards like Tampa Bay. But those track subtleties are still kind of hard to forecast, but they could still be a big difference in the final outcome. Show you the current radar and satellite presentation. Storm, not doing too great tonight. It is over land, and we do see still a misalignment of the center. The convection near where the center actually is, which is somewhere about right here, is waned a good bit in the last few hours and is not very solid. But she does have some nice convection down to the south, although if it's that far away from the center, it's not really helping the storm. It's just kind of a byproduct of her being there. So there is some dry air in the vicinity. These little rope clouds, you can kind of see those are indicating some drier air. So she's still struggling a little bit. We can also see this on the Key West radar. The mid-level center of circulation somewhere like in here, and the low-level center via the National Hurricane Center is at about 23 north, 82 west, which is right about here. You can almost see a little faintness of it on the radar, but this radar is scanning pretty high. This is a Martin Dissenbaum site at Florida State University. It's a pretty cool site and has really good radar mosaics for tropical storms this time of year. Worth checking out. The logo at the top there. And so we can see Elsa is still misaligned. So the two things we're really watching for tonight, okay, is the storm's leaving Cuba, and what exact track is it going to take? Is there any last minute lurches? Is it going to come off and reform and move closer to Florida? Is it going to continue to want to ride up, this way? I mean, these small subtle shifts. You remember she came up towards Jamaica or Haiti, and then she made that lurch down towards Jamaica. And those small lurches, they don't look very big on a big map, but they will matter a lot for trajectory. If the storm comes off following the low level center, or does it follow this mid level center? And that small difference, could put this thing on shore way earlier or way later. And the other question is, can she realign her vortexes? Again, the low and mid level centers still aren't, they don't look like they're aligned tonight. And that misalignment does not allow the storm to breathe and do what it has to do to deepen and grow as a tropical storm or a hurricane. It's something she's been fighting pretty much her entire time being in the Caribbean up until this point, and that's why she has not been a more significant hurricane so far and has been, a more messy tropical storm. So again, the question is, can she do that? Well, our computer models still seem to think that's a possibility. The HWRF model shows this pretty well. This is valid for right about right now, so you can see here HWRF tonight, valid for about 11 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, the center will be nearing the coast of Cuba, but the 1007 millibars isn't very impressive. And then the actual mid-level center, which you see here with the wind barbs, is actually over here. So Elsa, a little bit, well, not very aligned still. But as we take the model a little bit forward, we'll see this kind of shaping up as you see that kind of, watch it kind of pull that low level center up under her. See how it tracks back off and kind of rotates clockwise up under the mid level center. And now you have the low pressure stamp for the surface and up under those mid level winds. That's when Elsa may begin to re-strengthen. And you'll see what the HWRF does with her is it actually gives her some favorable strengthening for a solid 12-hour run. Yeah, down 991 millibars. That's pretty good low pressure. probably near hurricane intensity on this map, or at least 70 mile an hour, 65 mile an hour winds on the surface. But there is some wind shear that will begin to act on the storm. We can go back to the satellite loop here, and you'll see this large band of yellows here on the map, all part of a larger upper trough that's over the region that's going to be picking Elsa up and turning her over Florida. And that will also push some southwest winds towards the storm and some drier mid-level air towards the storm when she's up here by Tampa Bay and Bonita Beach and all that. So you can see she's about to enter this channel of drier air aloft and those southwest winds. This is represented by the model pretty well. You can see here a lot of all the greens or stuff are pretty much on this side of the storm. And then back here on the other side of the storm, there's drier air, the lighter colors, and also all the thunderstorms kind of blown off from southwest to northeast, indicating the dry air in the wind shear. When that happens, Elsa stops strengthening on this model and pretty much holds steady right about 991, 992, 990 or so through landfall somewhere in the Big Bend. So that honestly is probably a pretty good representation of what we'll probably see. We'll see her come off Cuba, stumble for a few hours, and then she'll kind of get pumping. You'll see a big convective burst. She's going to look a little stronger. It's going to be, oh no, here it comes. She could still be a Category 1 hurricane. That's definitely possible. Some models still show it. Most still show the potential for a tropical storm, staying at about 55, 65 miles an hour. Hurricane Center official forecast still 65 miles an hour. Could she get 5 or 10 mile an hour stronger right by the core and technically be a hurricane? Yes. But it's not going to have enough time to build a wind field, eyewall replacements, build an eye, all that stuff. It's not going to have time to do that. So the impacts really kind of work out to be not a whole lot different. Yes, it's a worse day if you're right by where the center comes ashore. But, if you see that, oh, she's a hurricane again, oh, God, tomorrow, it's not, it's not that dramatically different. It's just 5 or 10 miles an hour that happens to hit the threshold of tropical storm to hurricane. So not a whole lot of difference there, but it is worth keeping an eye on because those last minute strengthening bursts can, they can influence some of the local impacts for wind speeds and for storm surge, things like that. Let's go ahead and look at those local impacts real quick. We hit these earlier in yesterday's or this morning's video. So we're not going to go too crazy in depth. But wind gust forecast, this is via the GFS, and this is the maximum wind gust set to any time between now and Thursday or Wednesday night, Thursday morning. And you see at this point the storm would probably be up here in Georgia and South Carolina. GFS showing the more tame, reasonable wind gust forecast. You see a lot of the peninsula of Florida on the southeast coast probably staying below tropical storm force. Northeast Florida getting into those 35 to 45 mile an hour range is what I said on my personal account when I shared. That's probably what we're going to see in our area here. Central Florida looking at this wind gusting at about 35, 45, maybe somewhere close to 50. The further west you go, like I-75 corridor, as you get in the 40, 50 mile an hour range. And then the immediate coastline seeing this wind gust closer to 60, 65 miles an hour. Again, when we say the hurricane, let's say she's a 70 mile an hour tropical storm, that's the maximum sustained winds anywhere in the storm. So in reality, what it really translates to is like 65 or so mile an hour wind gusts because it's so hard to actually capture that pure maximum sustained wind. So this is kind of a realistic look. Now, if you're looking for the high end, if you're thinking like, well, what's the worst case? Well, if she hits hurricane status and really blows up and takes full advantage of her run, and say her trajectory winds up going back a little bit west and she's got this long time over water and maximizes before she hits the Big Bend, then, you're talking about these sort of wind gusts, which would be, 55, 65, the 75 miles an hour along the immediate west coast of Florida, really from like Bonita Beach up here to the Big Bend. And then, it looks like a little bit higher gusts inland, and especially north central Florida. Could be seeing some 60 mile an hour wind gusts, and this would be like 45 to 55 miles an hour for much of northeast Florida. So that's kind of like the higher end, the 1 in 4, 1 in 5 sort of chance if she really kind of, overachieves what you might see. Flooding rain definitely going to be a big concern over the next couple of days. The Weather Prediction Center actually went ahead and upgraded to a moderate risk of excessive rainfall for the west coast of Florida, slight risk for the rest of the peninsula. Definitely going to be a lot of rainfall coming with this. Rainfall totals for most of central and eastern Florida around 2 to 4 inches, and then about 4 to 8 inches for the west coast of Florida. And anytime you hear, say, 4 to 8 inches of rain, you need to be thinking, well, I could get, almost double that or more. So be thinking around like a foot or so in the worst case scenarios, which someone probably will get, and they'll just be unlucky where the thunderstorms and heavy rain bands just continue to train over your area. It's impossible to predict who actually gets that, but just know in tropical events like this, your neighbor a couple miles down the road may get 2 inches of rain, you may get 8 inches of rain. It's just how these things kind of like to dump their rain. Storm surge also a big deal. Tampa Bay and some of the areas surrounding up to 3 to 5 feet. I told y'all earlier I thought these would come up a little bit, and they did. Storm surge warning, again, also in effect from Bonita Beach to the Auxilia River, I think is how you say it, but definitely some serious storm surge. And if you're near the coast here, definitely want to think about getting away from the immediate coastline because a 5 foot storm surge is nothing to mess with. And again, if she's a little stronger and comes a little bit further to the west and you have more of a fetch and more strength in the winds, there are likely some of these little bays right here may even go over 5 feet. So definitely not something to screw around with in these storms, even if it's a tropical storm that's this strong. You can see some pretty high surge in a very vulnerable area, such as the west coast of Florida, with very shallow shelf waters where that water just gets piled up and pushed inland. So don't screw around with that and get out of there if you need to. And the last thing, guys, is severe weather. Marginal to slight risk set tomorrow for the peninsula of Florida. Again, tornado outlook about 2 to 5% for any one area. And you will see several tornado warnings tomorrow as these bands rotate on shore. And not going to be the best day ever, but keep an eye on them, have ways to get alerts, all that fun stuff, because these tropical tornadoes aren't particularly strong or long lasting usually, but they can be pretty quick and can kind of take you by surprise if you're not, paying attention. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, it's what I got for you tonight, guys. The rain bands have already started for South Florida. You'll see the bands move into Central Florida by middle of the day tomorrow. Northeast Florida will get the first outer bands by tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and she'll make landfall sometime early on Wednesday. With the worst of the weather, late tomorrow to early Wednesday for much of the southern and central part of Florida, and then Wednesday morning to Wednesday afternoon for the northern part of Florida, and then she'll be moving off into the Carolinas and Georgia, where tropical storm watches could go up tomorrow for much of the coastline. Even though she may be a depression, when she's over land, some of the winds on shore may be enough to warrant some tropical storm watches and warnings. So keep an eye out for that. We'll talk more about you guys tomorrow, and we'll see what she got for you. So anyway, guys, what I got for you this evening. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.